Vera jumped over the rather high wall, surprised at her own dexterity. She lowered her eyes an instant and saw below her a pile of skulls on a bed of skeletal limbs. She shrieked with fright, crashing into the rattling skulls. Then the limbs came alive, flailing all around her. A scrawny hand shot out to grab her. Thank goodness it's a dream. Sighing deeply, she took a sip of water from a bottle on the bedside table and curled back into bed, with the scare of the nightmare still lingering in her mind's eye. Unable to drift back into sleep immediately, her thoughts once again ran riot. She imagined herself frail and withered as her mother was, before she passed away. Some of these harrowing reflections much too often translated into her nightmares. Although she was now an adult, she very much missed her parents, more so as she juggled with life's prospects. After university, she had not actually found a job commensurate with her field of study in psychiatry, so she took to selling wax prints like her mother did. She was at a phase in her life where she needed a hand to guide her. She was not alone in her lack. Her siblings undoubtedly missed their parents as well. Their father was a wealthy man. He owned cattle ranches and large tracts of farmlands, more than anyone else in the region. Thus, he was considered thrice wealthier among his contemporaries in the small town of Tamar. He had given his 4 children the best of education, and to the displeasure of his relatives and friends, he had only one wife. Why would he refuse to marry another wife with all the wealth he possessed? They often reproached him. Why would only one woman and 4 children be the beneficiaries of his stupendous wealth? He should be having 3 wives and 17 children by now. JY, as the whole town called him, brushed aside their criticisms. Nobody knew better how he should manage his own affairs, except himself. JY loved to travel. His businesses took him across the borders to sell and buy animals and farms produce. Sometimes he was away for several months, and his return was always a joyous occasion. He came bearing gifts for everyone, and he would have a bull slaughtered. With nothing worthwhile doing by way of entertainment in Tamar, people were very expectant of a good time whenever they heard JY had arrived. Half of the town found their way to his residence to eat and sing and dance till very late in the evening. One could hear JY laughing loud and long with his cronies. The rest of the days were spent with his family until he was ready to travel again. But on this return trip in particular, JY surpassed himself. He called for 2 bulls to be slaughtered. The next morning, the small town woke up to the news that JY was found cold in his bed. The scoffers had a field day. Some said his juju days were over. Others narrated their knowledge of how the rituals of those who sought the help of the fetish priests were performed, as if they were the acolytes of the shrines. They said the deities gave those who sought wealth from them a number of years to live to enjoy their opulence, after which they died sudden deaths, just like the way JY went. They discussed with glib tongues the methods the wealth seekers used in attaining their riches. Some of them sacrificed their loved ones, but JY must have loved his wife and children so much, he gave himself as sacrifice. Now that he was dead, his riches would dissipate. Time would soon tell, they prophesied. Then they concluded he knew his time was up. That was why he gave out chunks of meat, not only to the chief and the elders, but to almost everyone in Tamar. Some people refused to touch the meat. It was of blood money. Others did not care where their next meal came from. The meat would make their soups delicious. JY was a rich man, and he had been generous till his last breath. If the saucepan so happened to be filled to the brim, it would certainly touch the lid. Now their benefactor was gone, so would the occasional aroma of cow meat that emanated from their kitchen. May JY rest in peace. They openly wept to his home to offer their condolences. Vera put aside these upsetting memories and dressed up quickly to make the 2-hour journey for the forum. She was one of the speakers. "It'll be a grueling task, Doc." Weeks earlier, Vera had complained to Dr. Ayamga, who had become a rather comfortable person to be with. He had invited Vera to be part of his research team on the HIV virus outbreak in the country. "It's for a good cause, my dear," he coaxed. She often shied away when he used such endearments for her, but she came to realize that he addressed even his female staff in this manner, which got them dashing away to do his bidding. In spite of that, Vera continued to find excuses to worm her way out of presenting a paper at the forthcoming seminar. He hugged her with joy when she finally agreed to join the team. She got to the auditorium in record time. It was soon filled with anxious and expectant faces, baffled by this new pandemic in their midst. Vera flipped through her papers and took her turn. The hall went quiet as she painted a vivid picture of the repercussions of terminal diseases on families worldwide, and now the HIV/AIDS pandemic. She narrated some of the experiences she had encountered whilst taking care of her mother, who had contracted the virus. The stigma, the fear of contracting the virus, and the diminishing self-worth that still hung around her. Throughout the presentation, she fought to keep her tears at bay. She was met with a loud applause, yet during question time the audience harbored mixed feelings of the disease they were dealing with. Could it be more deadly than the health authorities were revealing? Did they actually know what was at hand on this side of the globe? They were yet to understand the full rigors of the virus, and most of them feared the disease had come to stay. Vera saw her brother enter the auditorium earlier. She was thankful for his support. After their father passed away, he put aside his scholarly pursuits to take charge of his businesses. Ofori always felt distressed whenever he saw his younger sister struggling with her heightened emotions at events such as this. He listened while she shifted from the outcome of a research to a replay of her inner struggles. There was no doubt she had been suffering the after-effects of their mother's demise more than any of them these past years. Durowa died a painful death. The soreness of losing a husband had not lessened when 2 years later, the rich widow went down with a fever which would not go away. "She is missing her husband," the observers propounded. "She must find for herself another man," others suggested. Durowa had once been a nurse, but she gave up her career when she married a wealthy man. She was a pampered wife, and she knew no hardship. Now, her days were filled with tears and sorrow. Frail and consumed by grief, she refused to seek medical help. She was the only one who knew what was happening to her at the time. One night, as she lay in bed, her thoughts returned to her husband's final day with her, a moment forever etched in her mind. Durowa sat on the edge of the bed as JY entered, holding a bag. He smiled warmly at her, but his eyes quickly filled with tears. "Durowa, you're forever beautiful." Durowa, surprised, touches his arm gently.
"Why the tears, my love? I'm the one who's supposed to cry when you leave or return from your trips."
"That's because you missed me."
"Come, my darling."
She leads him to sit beside her.
"What's wrong?"
JY composes himself, then quietly chuckles. "Did I just cry like a baby? Forgive me, my dear. I miss you too whenever I'm away."
"Then take me on your next trip."
JY shakes his head with a bittersweet smile. "No more trips." Durowa laughs, clapping lightly.
"Ah, you're retiring. Handing the business to Jihu, aren't you?"
"I've traveled enough." JY takes her hands and looks into her eyes. "Now, open the bag." Durowa lifts the bag and sets it on the bed, surprised by its weight.
"Did you bring the whole world home for me?"
JY chuckles as she unzips it, revealing fine linen. "These are for Aku, Vera, and Seli. Give them to the girls whenever you wish." He pulls out a brown envelope and hands it to her. "And this is for you, my love. Your birthday is just a few weeks away. Promise me you'll wait and open it only on that day."
"Only on my birthday?"
she says with a grin.
"You know I'm terrible at waiting, right? But I'll try. Thank you, my darling. You spoil me too much."
One fine morning, the suffering widow called her children together. After their usual light conversation, she suddenly sat up in bed, her smile absent. Then, with a tone of quiet resolve, she dropped a bombshell. "Take me to my people." The children gasped. None of them was willing to go with her to Cisse to take care of her. In the ensuing days, their mother refused to touch her meals. Neither would she talk to them. Vera decided to have a conversation with her when she took in her lunch. "Mother, we are all worried. You have to eat. We shall take you to the hospital too." "No, I'll kill myself before you try." "No, you can't go that way, Mother. As if you don't know what hospitals are for. They would just diagnose your illness and give you the necessary medication. Take me to my people and let me have my peace of mind." It was Vera who took a hard decision to go to Cisse with her. It would be difficult, she knew, but the young woman promised herself not to get overly hassled with helping her mother, who could barely walk. So Ofori sent them to the village. It was on a Saturday. They had no idea there was a funeral on that day. They got there just as the cortege was on its way to the cemetery, which led out of town by Durowa's house. The people saw Durowa's frail body virtually carried by her children into the house. The next day, the house was filled with the village folk to welcome them. The children would not let them see their mother yet. She was asleep, they warded their mother. Ofori left the next day, wishing Vera the best of luck and fortitude. Meanwhile, Durowa's relatives persisted until they were able to see her. They shook their heads mournfully and wished away whatever illness was plaguing their beloved sister. The women came often to sweep the compound and fetch water for Vera, who strived to make a new home for herself at Cisse. Ofori and Aku visited often while Seli was away in school. One early dawn, the cock crowed to wake them up. So did the gong-gong beater, who announced the arrival of a team of doctors to remote villages in the district. Once in a while, the people clamored for every opportunity to have free medical care, which hitherto would have eluded them due to the level of poverty in the villages around. With much persuasion, Durowa agreed to see the team of doctors. She could not go to them, but one young doctor decided to see her at her residence. "How long has she taken ill?" he probed. "Over a year now. We've been to the hospital, if that is what you are about to ask," Vera lied without hesitation. The doctor's head went up sharply to glance at her. She sounded very intelligent, he thought to himself, and wondered what they were doing so far away from any medical facility. "She needs proper diagnosis of her ailment," demanded the young doctor, who gave his name as Dr. Ayamga. He happened to have a private practice aside from being in charge of a team of researchers in tropical diseases. To her joy, her mother finally agreed to get medical attention. Durowa's children gathered in Dr. Ayamga's office when the test results were released, very expectant. The doctor was his usual pleasant self, but he was a carrier of bad news which glued them to their seats. It would have been easier to accept another disease as the cause of their mother's ailment, not one which was so rife with misconceptions. "I'm afraid your mother may have carried the virus for quite some years now without knowing. She's in the last stages." "So what do we do, Doc?" "Presently there is no known cure, unfortunately." The message clanged in their ears like the metal door of a prison cell being shut. Their mother's death sentence had been pronounced. They trooped back home in diverse moods. "How cruel could fate be to visit this on us?" Ofori lamented. "How would Mother bear the dreaded accusations?" "Of what?" Aku glowered at him. "Accusations of sexual promiscuity. Isn't that the only mode of transmission people talk about?" "Why would they think that about her?" she burst out angrily. "Would you believe those malicious lies about your own mother?" Ofori shook his head dejectedly. He was just stating the obvious remarks and comments that would follow if the people of Tama and Cisse, even the neighboring villages, heard of the cause of their mother's illness. Indeed, the news spread quickly. Durowa's trusted cousin, who accompanied them to the hospital, bore the message on her lips everywhere. Aquele was illiterate, but AIDS was AIDS, and she knew what it spelt. The thrill of being the first to whisper the truth into ears got the better of her, and the consequences were vicious, especially for Vera, who was at the helm at Cisse. Vera would stretch on her bed when she had nothing to do. She would turn in her mind some of her unsavory encounters in the village. There was no denying the truth that their extended families had repulsively turned their backs on them now that their mother's illness had a name: the dreaded HIV. The women who came to help her stopped coming over, Aquele as well. Another instance was the day their paternal uncles came to visit. They refused to take their seats and also the water she offered them. Vera was confounded. These were people her parents had been so generous to. Even Delta, her well-groomed dog, came under attack. Children admired Delta very much and would try to get him out to play with him. Now, a dog from the home of the woman with HIV was pelted with stones and sticks and angrily cautioned to know where to roam. Whenever Vera dared to take a stroll to the riverside, she would notice their uneasy eyes boring into her as she went by. Her age-mates in the village, who had been her friends over the years, would not want to be seen standing with her anymore. Mother's disease had indeed stigmatized them, but no matter what anyone thought of the effects of the disease, she would touch and hold her until her last breath. One weekend, all of Durowa's children were gathered at Cisse. "We have to get Mother out of here," suggested Sally, who was back from school. Why did she choose to live far away from a hospital, as if she couldn't afford hospital bills? She expressed utmost grief. Aku grunted. "Hasn't anyone told you about Mother's threats lately? She said she would commit suicide if we move her from the village." Sally burst into tears. She was very much aggrieved at her mother's worsening condition. "She's not going to die, is she?" Ofori assured her they would find a cure for their dear mother. They could as well try herbal medicine. For all they knew, it could be their savior. Their conversation drifted to their mother, and she shook her head limply. There was nothing anyone could do for her. It was just a matter of time before she would be gone from this world. When they were quiet for a moment, Vera revealed to them the request of the people of Cisse. "They want her out of the village." "That is no bother," said the youngest, sounding hopeful. "Why?" Aku was forever incensed with the attitude of their relatives. "She is a health hazard. They have threatened to burn down the house if we don't take her away." Already in tears, Vera continued to tell them about the harassment they were facing in the village. "They wouldn't do that to their benefactor," Aku protested. "They can," Vera continued. The people did not care whether she had helped them or not. Their lives were in danger, per the devastating consequences of the disease. They heard about it all on the small radios they carried everywhere. She told them of a man in a village nearby with an incurable disease who was strangled by his own relatives. They slowly retired to their rooms, except for Sally, the youngest sibling, who joined Aku as she couldn't stop crying. It was almost dusk when Vera found herself alone again. That evening, she felt some sort of negative energy around her. She tried to shake it off by turning on loudly the radio in her room. She felt a deep sense of sadness she could not explain. A huge lump crawled up her throat, and she burst out crying. She was almost closing her eyes when she heard the familiar sound of Ofori's farm truck. A force he could not explain had pulled him back to Cisse. In the dead of night, when her children were all asleep, Durowa got out of bed with the aid of her walking stick and the wall. Although her weak frame trembled and ached with pain, a sense of purpose got her moving along, step by step. Before dawn, the village was awakened by the gong-gong. Fishermen who went to empty their nets found a body in the river trapped among the weeds.